today, of course, the talk is about the wisdom of Emerson, but I have a little story that has a little wisdom in it that I thought I'd start out with today. And it's about this Mother Superior who was on her deathbed. She was breathing her last breaths. And so all the nuns were gathered around, and they provided her with some warm milk that she thought, they thought she might like. And she didn't really care for it. So one of the nuns said, "Oh, I know where the Father keeps some brandy, so I'm going to go get some." And she takes some of the brandy and puts it in the warm milk, and the Mother Superior just starts drinking that milk down. And she drank one glass after another. And, so after a bit, one of the nuns says, "Mother Superior, what wisdom do you have for us as you go on to your next experience?" And so she said, "Don't sell that cow." I am especially fond of Waldo Emerson, and as you know, he's one of the great contributors towards our teaching. He started out as a Congregationalist minister and realized that his approach to spirituality, not necessarily religion, but spirituality, was a little bit different than what the normal congregational minister would be talking about and believing and expressing to their congregants. He, in my opinion, was one of the most inspired, wise philosophers, theologians, spiritual individuals of all time. I am so aligned with his teaching, and part of that has to do with the fact that he is so connected to nature and uses nature as one of the ways in which he really has that connection with the divine, and his realization of how that facilitated his understanding of a deeper knowledge of truth. So I believe that he gave us one particularly grand opportunity, and that was to understand the difference between the smallness or the details of any particular situation that we may be experiencing and the bigger picture, the greater whole, the larger vision of life. And to be able to somehow integrate those so that as we move forward in our individual expressions, we can somehow look to the greater idea, the greater vision. So there are two questions that I want to share with you this morning. And one of them is a question that we probably ask ourselves all the time. And that question would be, what is it that I want? And we ask ourselves that, and especially when something's happening in our lives, we're dealing with a challenge, or something is, confusing, or we need an answer. It comes down to, what do I want? And that's wonderful. And certainly our teaching allows us to find the pathway to answering that particular question or challenge or whatever it is. But there's a second question, a bigger question. A question that Emerson perhaps would have asked. And that's the question that is this: what is it that needs doing? In other words, all of a sudden, the emphasis goes away from the I and the very small detail or the smallness of what's going on to something much greater, to a greater idea, to a greater vision. And it's the difference between what serves us personally and what in some way is in harmony with and serves a greater idea. This is so much of what is behind Emerson's work, because he continues to take us from that smallness from the details to the bigger picture. His life was wrought with all kinds of horrible, seemingly horrible things. He had deaths and fires and tragedies and all kinds of things that went on, and yet there was something that continued to bring him back to a very peaceful and powerful center where he knew that there was something much greater than what was happening in the moment, and that he could move himself into that greater vision, that greater idea, which kept him truly inspired and truly moving to a better experience for himself and for the world. So I challenge us today to consider fulfilling both those questions. What do I want? And yet at the same time, what is the greater vision for the world? What is it that needs doing in the world? And we certainly use the process of affirmative prayer for doing so. Sometimes and always we ask what is for our greatest good. But let us ask perhaps what is for the greatest good of all? What is something that will fulfill a need that is beyond what's just happening right here in our experience? What if we state our desire for the greatest good of all and for a greater vision for ourselves and for the world? We're certainly being asked to do that today, aren't we? We're certainly being asked to challenge the status quo. We're looking at so many things that are changing moment to moment, day to day. And this particular idea has challenged me greatly. I'll share some of that with you in a moment. But what this is really about, in answering those two questions and bringing them together and really serving that greater idea, what we have to do is we have to do something that allows us to make a connection with that deepest harmony so that we are in the flow of that divine harmony that is in, through, and all things, so that we can literally feel the energy of the greater good and actually experience it so that we can create it in whatever we want to have happen in our world. So to give you a little hint here in terms of what Emerson is saying, he clearly states this. He says, a little consideration of what takes place around us every day would show us that a higher law than that of our own will regulates events. I think you almost think that he's alive today saying that. Isn't that interesting? That our painful labors are unnecessary and fruitless. That only in our easy, simple, spontaneous action are we strong, and by contenting ourselves with obedience, we become divine. Because what happens is we become obsessed by our small problems. And the idea of obedience, doesn't that, kind of sets the hairs on the back of my neck straight up when I hear that word obedience? But he's talking about an obedience that really allows us to listen to something greater than our human selves. An obedience to a higher law, to a higher idea. So how many times do we try and try and try, and we keep barking up the same tree over and over again, and we wonder, why is this not working? Why is this not happening? And it just doesn't feel right. It isn't falling into place, and it just won't happen the way that we think it should happen. That word should happen this way. Well, our we and our ego is trying to will something to happen. We're trying to make something happen. We're trying to bring something into being. And it's not in line with the higher laws. It's not in line with this higher harmony. Or it doesn't connect us to a high expression of ourselves. Like many of you have probably done over the course of the last few months, we refinanced a mortgage. Oh my, was that an experience. And it's like we've done this so many times before, and the first experience with that was the little gentleman on the phone says, it'll be easy, it'll be over, and within 5 weeks it'll close, all will be done. Well, 12 weeks later, we're still dealing with this changing. All the rules keep changing day after day, and everything keeps, turning around so that it's a different story every single day. And on Friday, actually Friday was pretty good. A few days before that, there was this part of me that just wanted to make it happen. And it was like we just felt like just grabbing somebody's neck, but there's no neck to grab. It's the institution. There's no real person that's in charge of this. It's just what it is. And we looked at each other and we said, maybe it's just not right. Maybe let go. Maybe we just need to surrender to the process and not fight it and not try and make anything happen. The moment we did that, they called and said, it's going to close on Monday. It was such a great lesson. I mean, that just the consciousness that just shifted in us. It was like, I want to be in control, I want to make this happen, and all of a sudden, when we just let go, and we listen, and we go into a different place in consciousness, you don't even have to say a word. It changes. Things shift. So, we have to ask ourselves, are we stuck in our smallness? Because that's where we were stuck. We were stuck in the smallness of this particular thing. This one thing that somehow was just the only thing in our world at the time. So when we do that, when we surrender, when we let go, it's not about giving our power away. It's not about being a doormat. It's not about giving in. It's not about giving up or compromising. It's about plugging in to a universal energy and listening to the guidance that it brings about and allowing it to somehow lift us to a new perspective in our lives and to a new perspective of whatever it is that's going on so that we can deal with it in an intelligent, calm, loving, and harmonious way. Emerson goes on to say, there is guidance for each of us, and by lowly listening, we shall hear the right word. And the lowly listening, strangely enough, paradoxically enough, brings us to a place where we actually move to a higher consciousness. The lowly listening, the listening to the finer energies, allows us to move to a place where we can see things from that higher level. So we have to ask ourselves, you know, when I'm listening to that inner voice, how do we know if it's the ego or if it's spirit? How do we know? And I think we have to ask ourselves the very, very difficult questions. Because we have to say, is it the attached aspect of our being that's speaking to me? Am I attached to something as I'm hearing these words? Or is it that harmonious, flowing essence of expression that I'm hearing? Which one is it? Which voice really are we hearing? And the key is, are we really coming from that deepest part of our spiritual nature? Are we really, really in that place? Am I coming from my bigness and not my smallness? Big question. So every Sunday, what I try to do is share with you some tools, whether you connect with this idea or not, or realize it's been going on, but this is how I create my talks. I give you tools, I give you a practice, and I give you an intention. So the tools today, same as always, same old, same old. Meditation, reflection, treatment. To know that we take the time to go within and truly become centered and clear and allow that beautiful sense of inner peace and spirit to well up in us so that we really can hear and feel and experience that which is the inner voice, the true voice. The practice is important. It's to reflect on the awareness of what is beyond and behind whatever fears, whatever challenge, whatever resistance that we perceive. When we were dealing with the mortgage situation, I think within both of us there was the feeling that maybe a fear was there of, oh my God, it won't happen, and what would happen if we didn't get it, and if, you know, on and on. I mean, and your mind then begins to make up all these great stories about what could happen. And so we have to look behind those and say, why am I experiencing that fear? What's behind that? And to then take it out a few steps and say, you know what? We'll still be fine. Everything is okay. Everything is all right. There'll always be a solution. There'll always be a way through this. And to finally just get to a place where we just let go. And and really look at what is the fear behind this? What is my resistance? What is the challenge that I'm having difficulty with? So step by step, we move into a bigger idea. We move out of that small little thing into this bigger idea, into the bigger consciousness. And we seek to understand the deeper lesson behind what's happening. The experience is in the teacher. The teacher is in the experience. So the intention then that we set, follow the path that allows us to express our authentic nature. What's that path for you? What's the path for you that allows you to be authentic, that allows you to be the very qualities of God? And find that place where you find the harmony of God, where you feel that sense of divine presence in all that you do, that you're just flowing with things. Like you said in the beginning, you're not struggling, you're not fighting. It's just an easy flow. So the bottom line is this: are we truly dedicated to living a life led by Spirit? Not by that ego, but by Spirit. Are we really dedicated to really listening, the lowly listening, the obedience to that higher idea that truly guides us? Do we want to make a difference in the world? It's a big, big question. Do we want to make a difference in the world? Why are we here? What is it that we can do that truly affects other people in a positive way, that lifts other people, that allows for things in the environment, in the universe, to somehow be expressed in a way that serves other people? If we're connected to that idea, we will indeed be led and guided by that harmony, and our own expression will be easy and effortless. And are we willing to question, to challenge our attachments to people and things? It's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to do, because we are attached to things. I wasn't going to share this morning, but many of you already know we had a wonderful little terrier named Harriet that we had for 13 years, and Harriet made her transition this last week. And yes, I had great attachment to Harriet. I still have great sadness around that. But there's a place where I know that the attachment can be lessened, and I can move into a place where I see her in a greater way, in a greater idea, the memories that she left behind, the impact that she made on our lives. All of those things are significant, important, and they help to release the attachment to the grief or to the sadness, to move on to a bigger idea, to a bigger place. So what are the attachments we have to people and things? And some of them are not pleasant. Some of them are things where we're attached to our guilt. We're attached to our need to do something, or our obligations. We're attached to things. And all of those attachments keep us from flowing, keep us from being in that harmony. So are we willing to make the time, make the effort, and really, really enter into that harmonious place of truth and light and love? That's our question, and that's what we have the opportunity to do. And it's up to each one of us. I want to close today with a poem that Emerson wrote that I think leads us to that higher idea, that keeps us in that place of really, really asking and also experiencing. Because part of this is we have to enjoy life as well. Life is it's not a dirge. Life is an enjoyable experience, and it has so many things to offer us. Such a joyous thing to have, such an opportunity to express who we are from within, from that deep place of sacred connection. And so he calls this poem Success. To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded. And so it is.